inverse paranoid principle is probably the most powerful principle I've ever come across. Anything I've ever heard in the world of personal and success philosophy, this one thing trumps everything in my opinion, because it is the primary directive for how we can really live a more inspiring reality. And I first came across this principle when I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book. And there he talks about this idea of the inverse paranoid. So most people in the world are upright paranoid. They're just paranoid that life is out to get them, right? They take everything so personally. And so the inverse paranoid is the opposite. It's actually assuming that life is conspiring for your good. Life is conspiring for you instead of against you. What an amazing idea. What an amazing idea that is. What if we just walked around and navigated through this thing we call reality with the assumption that life was actually for us instead of against us? Most people, it's quite the opposite, and you can see the reality of that based on their results, right? What is science? What is really scientific? We have all this discussion on scientific case studies and double-blind studies, and all the experts are saying this and that. Whatever, who cares? The reality is science is based on producing a repeatable result. Right? And that is the deal. People I've seen that are able to produce repeatable results in their life tend to actually have this inverse paranoid philosophy, whether they know that or not. They're just naturally optimistic. It doesn't mean that they're not paying attention to what's going on, but they have a certain way of narrowing their peripheral filters and how they're taking in external stimuli from the world. They're basically transmuting the stimulus or the data that they're getting from the world and transmuting it into something of a higher nature, right? This is a really important thing that I want to bring up while we're talking about this concept, is the idea of sacrifice. Now, a lot of people, when they think of sacrifice, they think of giving up something, right? But the reality is sacrifice is simply trading in something of a lower nature for something of a higher nature. I heard that from success philosopher Bob Proctor one time. And that's really the deal. So we're constantly going through that process. And also on this topic of the inverse paranoid, I was in Sedona when I was living in Sedona for a little while. And I walk into this little magical chocolate shop, and I see a book sitting on the counter, and it's called Pronoia, right? And it's the exact same concept, just titled differently. It's Pronoia, and the subtitle was How the Universe Conspires for Your Good. And I read that book, and every single day in Sedona, I felt like, I felt a little off. I felt mentally like, oh man, how am I going to make this happen? I would just read a page out of that book, and boom, it clicked me back into harmony. I realized that that's right. Everything is for me. I can use every single experience that I'm giving as building material for the architecture of the life that I'm creating right now.